Hey everyone, welcome to this video about how I do my self-development work. Originally, I was just going to make this a video about how I use astrology specifically for self-development, but then in my head it grew into something way bigger, and now I want to very generally and very specifically go over what self-development is, what the difference is between self-development and self-help, what the tools are that I use for my own self-development, and also what the goal of self-development itself is. So self-development can be about anything relating to yourself. It could be about your character, it could be about your abilities, your skill set, it could be about your body, about your spirituality, anything that is developed and changes level essentially. And this is not about improving. That is why I never use the word self-improvement, except for in my Instagram hashtags because it works. But I would never use this word in relation to myself because it's not about improving. And I think that's something many people need to understand, that it's not a matter of improving yourself and being a better person. It's a matter of being a more well-rounded person. But we are going to get into that deeper when I talk about the goals of self-development, which is now. So the goal of self-development is generally to become a more well-rounded person and develop into the person that you feel is right for you, that you feel is authentic and really true to what is within you. And of course, this isn't about satisfying others. This isn't about fulfilling other people's needs. It is very much about learning about yourself, studying yourself, and learning in a way where it teaches you how to care for yourself and how to understand yourself in deeper ways so that you know what is good for you, what is bad for you. You know the moments in which you need to indulge, binge watch your favorite TV show, and you know the moments in which it is better for you to be disciplined and to work on something in order to make yourself feel good. So it's basically the process of figuring out what drives you, what is your psyche like, what is your personality like, how do you relate to other people, and just getting on a path of being able to live life in as happy a way as possible, essentially. Happy, fulfilled, or content. But also, and I want to stress this, a side effect of self-development is that you, as you learn about yourself, also understand more about other people, which means that your sense of compassion, your sense of empathy is also developed as you learn more about the human mind. Through your own mind, you will learn how to be more compassionate with others. I think that's a very important part of it that sometimes gets ignored because it's, self-development, but it's also really about developing your relationships and developing how you see other people and how you feel for other people and how you help other people as well. So I have multiple tools and multiple approaches that I use in order to develop myself, and I'm going to go through them, and you can basically model and pick and choose whatever you want from this and see what resonates with you, see what inspires you. Before I get to those tools though, I want to talk for a minute about self-help versus self-development because I think it's a very important distinction that needs to be made. I think the core difference is very easy to understand because self-help you do when you already have an issue, when you are in the midst of a crisis, for example, in the midst of a breakup, a divorce, a grieving process. So you are already burdened with something and you are looking towards resources to help yourself with this and to helping you deal with the crisis that you are in or with the situation that you are in. It's essentially an emergency reaction or an emergency kit. And of course, this can lead to self-development, no question. If you read a bunch of resources about grieving or a bunch of resources about breakups and love and dating, whatever, then naturally you will develop yourself as a person because you get to know yourself better and you learn new tools in which you can deal with the emotions or the thoughts that you have. So of course they are very linked, But the motivation is still a little bit different between self-help and self-development. And self-development can be done from a place when you are doing well. It can be done from a place of power, of just wanting to develop yourself, change yourself in a positive way, essentially. And that is the main difference. So this also includes learning to deal with your emotions, learning to deal with whatever comes up. So it's kind of a preventative measure. Self-development is a preventative measure to the crisis or to being able to deal with crises. So the way I think about it is sort of like learning about the human body and learning first aid skills in advance rather than cutting your finger and quickly Googling how you can now take care of this. And of course, the first approach is self-development, learning about the human body and learning first aid, except as a metaphor, you understand. And self-help is when something has already happened and you now need to deal with it in an emergency situation. Now, I don't want to take away any credit or any benefit that self-help has with this. It's simply an observation that many times self-help comes at the time of crisis and self-development can come at any time, whether it's a crisis or you are doing well. And a really simple example of this is that very few people are going to read 10 books about divorce if they aren't getting divorced and they are in a happy relationship, whereas people who are interested in self-development or psychological topics would still read a book about the inner child or other psychological works that they are interested in. And they do this in order to heal themselves slowly, not out of a dying need or out of a intense need to fill something, to help something, to heal something, but simply to improve or change in a positive way, in a slow, conscious way. But of course, as I said, self-development can also come from a time of crisis. Absolutely no question. I don't want to deny that. But in general, I would say the difference is self-help is done from a place of struggle, and self-development can be done from a place of struggle, but it is also done from a place of power and finding your own agency and changing yourself in positive ways. Now, finally, let's talk about the tools that I use and how I do my own self-development work. I want to start off by saying that it is, of course, a permanent process. Essentially, every day you can do something towards your self-development. You can always be conscious about it. And it's basically just a learning process about your personality, about your tendencies, about your insecurities, about your weaknesses. And there's always something to be done, which doesn't mean we should pressure ourselves into always thinking, oh, we have to make every little thing, every little emotion we feel, every little conflict we have with people about some huge change or huge self-development. We can do that, but we don't have to. Don't put pressure on yourself to, focus in 10 different directions and sort of lose track of what you're actually focusing on. Because that can definitely happen as things pop up. We feel like we have to focus on everything and develop everything in our personality or in our skill set, even though maybe it is better to focus on one issue or one part of our personality first. So the first tool that I want to talk about that I use for self-development is typology in the general sense. Typology can be a lot of different things. For example, I count under it the Enneagram types, which are 9 different types of people. Then we have the Myers-Briggs personality test, which is 16 personalities that you can relate to, and astrology, which obviously has the 12 zodiac signs, 9 planets, your birth chart, and many things to relate to. So the important thing here is the way in which you do this is not to stereotype yourself and say, oh, I am an INFJ, which I am, by the way, in the Myers-Briggs personality test. This means I'm like this, and like this. No. What you do instead is to look at the whole system and understand how it works. You don't just, cram the fast food of, oh, these are the 10 attributes an INFJ has into your mouth, but instead You try to nourish yourself by understanding the system and understanding how you relate to it. And of course, you can look at attribute lists. That's what I did in the beginning, 100%. It's interesting. But always keep in mind that not all of it is going to apply to you. There's more than 16 people in this world. It's not a perfect test, but it can help give you the vocabulary that you need in order to describe states of emotions that you have, tendencies that you have, weaknesses that you have, and strengths that you have. And that is the case with astrology and the Enneagram as well, and other kinds of typology or any psychological test. And I think the mistake that maybe some people make is to think that this is about really putting yourself into one certain drawer, into one little box, and then you fully understand yourself. But that's not what it's about. It's really about, on a mental level, understanding these systems and then seeing what is true for you, what is not true for you, and what these systems suggest you need to develop. And one example I want to give of this is that as an INFJ in the Myers-Briggs personality test, you have certain functions. Every single one of the 16 personalities has different cognitive functions. And the INFJ, for example, has introverted intuition and extroverted feeling. And those two functions do some amazing, crazy things, because introverted intuition means that you think about the world very, very deeply. You try to see patterns everywhere. You try to understand everyone by their behavior. You kind of categorize people, understand people, and spend a lot of time thinking about the behavior of others, your own behavior, which is also why I guess I'm sort of made for the self-development thing, because I naturally think about these things very intensely with the introverted intuition, cognitive function that is dominant in INFJs. But at the same time, you have extroverted feeling, which means that as an INFJ, you spend a lot of time understanding other people's emotions and then acting in ways to support them, or acting in ways that are in alignment with the satisfaction of other people, to the point that sometimes you struggle with having an own firm identity. And just like this, as an example, every personality type in the Myers-Briggs test has certain weaknesses and certain strengths that can become weaknesses if we overthink, or if we fantasize too much, if we get stuck in our minds. And I think this is a very, very great way to give a language to the things that you do, to the way that your mind works, and then from there, develop into new directions, develop cognitive functions that maybe aren't dominant for you or do not come to you naturally. And it's the same with astrology and the Enneagram types. It just offers you a system to relate to, not to pigeonhole yourself into a certain personality or a certain type of being. And like this, you can identify your weaknesses or the areas where you maybe aren't so proficient, maybe you are not very patient, maybe you are not very understanding towards others. And all of this you can maybe realize through these tests as well, and then work on it. By the way, I also made a video about my astrology chart and how I sort of work with it and what it means for me, so I'm going to link that below. The second tool that I use for self-development is the study of systems of knowledge. Now, what I mean by systems of knowledge is systems like the Kabbalah, the I Ching, alchemy, the tarot, and I don't mean drawing tarot cards and reading tarot for yourself, but understanding the system of tarot, reading books about the system, about the whole of it, because it is a very good representation of the human being and of the human mind, of the human existence in a very wholesome and very all-encompassing way. And that's what most of these systems offer you. And of course, the study of religion falls under this as well. If you are a religious person, if you are Christian, if you are Muslim, if you're a Jew, you study religion also from the point of view of wanting to understand the philosophical systems behind it, And that way you relate it to yourself and see how it can help you in your life. Now, the third tool that I use is simply awareness. Basically, being aware of when something triggers me or when something brings out an insecurity in me, a situation that I encounter that makes me fearful, that makes me tense, that stresses me. And of course, I'm not always self-aware. Things happen, I get emotional, I get stressed, I get anxious. But if I stay conscious of these behaviors in general, I can work on them and deal with them better as I develop myself. So the third important thing is really that self-awareness, and that evolves into shadow work. I made a basic video about shadow work. I will link that down below as well, so I won't go too deeply into it, but it's essentially a practical psychological approach to figuring out the real core of your issues and then healing them in a way, integrating them in a way that allows you to change your reactions, change your fearful, hurtful, stressed, insecure reactions to situations outside of yourself. So this is really about becoming conscious of your issues and then working with them, for example, by journaling, by really using writing as a tool to get to the bottom of what is wrong with you if you react badly in a situation. You can also use tarot for this in order to commune with your subconscious mind so that it's not just your conscious mind giving its input. And of course, you can also use things here like affirmations. I have a video about how to use affirmations in shadow work specifically as well. Not to plaster over something and tell yourself, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine, but to actually get to the deeper core of your issues and then helping yourself, empowering yourself by using affirmations or by journaling, by using tarot. So first you become aware of the issue, then you get to the bottom of it, and then you integrate it, you heal it, and employ these strategies in order to do it, tarot, journaling, etc. Now that sounds easier than it is, obviously, but that's the basis of shadow work. The fourth thing I want to say is take feedback from people. When someone tells you you are acting in a certain way that is problematic to them, or they are bothered by your behavior, or they tell you that you have a certain issue, don't get defensive. A lot of the time, yes, this is going to be that person's problem, not yours. Because if something bothers us about another person, most of the time it's our issue, not theirs. However, it's up to you as someone who is interested in self-development to still take these things seriously and then reflect on whether they feel true to you without bullshitting yourself and without being dishonest to yourself and protective and defensive, but to simply listen to what other people have to say about your behavior and what might be a struggle that you're not even aware of or an issue that you're not even aware of. Now, the fifth tool is really engaging with resources, with, buying online courses, with books that you have, with any sort of resource that you watch like this. Take notes on things, learn things so that you gain a deeper understanding of the human mind, of the people around you, of yourself, and see how you relate to things. I think I want to say this here. One of the mistakes that I made when I was younger was that when I would imbibe these resources, read books or watch movies or watch documentaries, I would not think about how it really relates to me and why it makes me feel certain ways. And I think that's something that is very important, that you always take the things that you take in back to yourself. How does it make you feel? How does it relate to your life? What can you legitimately learn from it? That is a key question here and makes the difference between just engaging with resources online to consume and to numb yourself, versus looking at resources online and actually learning from them and actually drawing from them something that is meaningful to you personally. And the sixth tool I want to mention is to deeply relate to the stories of people around you. I do this sometimes, but not nearly as often as others. I know some people are so interested in the lives of other people. Maybe you're one of those people who reads a lot of autobiographies, listens to a lot of interviews, talks to a lot of people. For me, it's more that sometimes I get very focused on single people, famous people or artists or YouTubers. And then I start to understand a lot about them and a lot about their world. I go very deep looking into one person rather than, reading 4 different autobiographies in 2 months or listening to 5 different interviews from 5 different people about a certain subject. I'm much more singularly focused on people in that way. But it is a very good tool to listen to other people's stories and relate them to yourself. I'm going to link the videos that I mentioned below and also some other resources that I created about psycho-spiritual subjects. There's also a Patreon that I run. There you can get journaling prompts, you can get tarot readings, you can get live sessions with me. And yeah, I would love to hear your opinion on all of this, hear how you do your self-development, because I know many people have many different approaches. So it would be super awesome to hear from you in the comments, and so that everyone can learn from each other. And yeah, if you want to dwell on my domain a little longer, you can subscribe, you can like this video, share this video if it helped you. And I truly appreciate that you've sat through it. You're doing a good job doing the self-development work by listening to this video. And I hope that you have the greatest of days, the greatest of weeks, and I will see you soon.